So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Now that all of the attendees have come in, I'm very pleased to start today's webinar on Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. Thank you for taking the time to attend today. I will make some housekeeping remarks, but before I think we can formally kick off today's event with a land acknowledgement led by Tamara Sohn of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada, or ISED. My name is Jackson Howard, Regional Coordinator of EURAXESS North America. You'll be hearing from my colleague and I in just a moment. But with this, Tamara, on behalf of ISED Canada, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Jackson. I'd like to start this meeting by acknowledging that living in the Ottawa-Gatineau region, I am on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I wish also to recognize that we all work in different locations. Therefore, you are probably working on different Indigenous lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. The Indigenous peoples are the traditional stewards of the land and waters where each of us are meeting today. I encourage you to take a moment to think about which territory you are on today. Thank you, Jackson. I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Tamara. And as you said, I think we're all coming from quite different regions of North America and beyond, so we can all reflect on that. As I said before, my name is Jackson Howard with EURAXESS North America. I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Daria Butner-Karajan, and many other partners and friends of EURAXESS. So as a quick reminder, I think many of you are already members, but we are an official project of the European Commission, and our mandate is to connect researchers to Europe. And this means connecting you with Europe if you're interested in forming collaborations, to Europe if you're hoping to go there, or helping Europeans come to your institutions based in North America. So whatever the mobility direction looks like, or the funding mechanism looks like, we have something for you as EURAXESS. With that, today's webinar will be focused exclusively on Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. Our main speakers will elaborate, so I can start wrapping up my housekeeping remarks and turn the floor to all the others. You may have noticed on the registration page, we also had some wording mentioning that today's webinar is tailored to those that have already had a basic introduction to Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. So if this is the first time you've heard of Pillar 2, or you're completely new to Horizon Europe and EU, the EU R&I framework program in general, we invite you to visit the event page, which we'll share in the chat momentarily, where we not only will have the recording to today's webinar uploaded within a day or two, but we also link to several past recordings over the last year or two that have a lot of information that will get you started. And today's presentation will build on that and supplement your knowledge. So please go back. We encourage you to look at any of those past ones. And then we also hope you'll be in touch with us. We send bi-monthly flash note emails letting you know a lot of different Canada, US, Europe related R&I news and funding updates. And then we also are very happy to come to your campus or give a virtual presentation. So please reach us at northamerica@euraxess.net. All of our information will be shared in the chat, and we'll make sure that we also send you a reminder email to all registrants that you'll get with a link to the recording and the PDF presentations from the speakers. So wrapping up the housekeeping remarks, please share your questions in the Q&A box. We have a lot of enthusiastic questions in the chat sometimes, but we'll keep the chat only for sharing on behalf of the speakers, websites, information, activities, things like that. If you have technical issues, we will keep our eye on the chat for that. But if you have any questions related to the content of the presentation, perhaps hold off a bit. We think a lot of the speakers are anticipating these questions and they're building their content around that. And then we will, towards the end, get to the interactive and live Q&A. We'll answer the pending questions. Also, in the chat, we will share some links to recent recordings we held last week on Pillar 1 of Horizon Europe. So essentially bottom-up individual research and mobility schemes. So you can click through those and then watch the recording on MSCA postdoctoral fellowships and ERC grants. And I think there's something for everyone there. So with this, I would like to make our first speaker introduction to the EU delegations to Canada and the United States. So I would like to invite either one by one or both together, both Kostas Kapsaropoulos from the delegation of the European Union in Ottawa to address the research community based in all of Canada. It's been 2 years since Canada associated to Horizon Europe and became part of Pillar 2. And in tandem, I would like to also welcome Dr. Florent Bernard, Kostas' counterpart in Washington, D.C., the science counselor of the EU delegation to the United States. Florent has been a very recognizable and friendly face to universities and industry throughout the whole country. So to both of you, thank you for joining us here today and sharing any thoughts you have for the audience. Kostas, Florent, please.
Thank you very much, Jackson and Daria, for this great initiative to talk today about Pillar 2 and of Horizon Europe. It's always a pleasure to engage with the research community, especially in Canada. Indeed, as you said, Canada is associated to Pillar 2, Global Challenges and Industrial Competitiveness of Horizon Europe since July 2020. 2024. And it has been 2 years of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm from researchers, from entities, companies in Canada who want really to reap and maximize the benefits of Canada's association to Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. Together with ICE at Horizon Europe Secretariat, the European Union delegation to Canada has organized targeted webinars, roadshows around the country, and also contributed to matchmaking events in order really to help entities based in Canada reap the benefits of the association. We are working hand in hand with EURAXESS. We are working hand in hand with the ICE at Horizon Europe Secretariat. We had a very, very successful webinar on AI in science yesterday, where we actually presented the specific codes of Horizon Europe Work Program 26-27 on AI in science. And we see already the fruit of this effort, of this collective effort. We see that Canadian participation is a success. I would like to tell you, of course, the numbers are evolving every day, that Canada has already received approximately 61 million euros in direct funding under Pillar 2, covering 130 participations in 103 projects. That's a success, a clear success, which is easily explained by the enthusiasm that we have encountered the last 2 years about Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe builds the bridge between the European Union and Canada. Thank you.
Thank
Over
you,
to you,
Kostas.
Florent, and
Yes,
with a pleasure to see you.
great to see you too, Kostas. Thank you for those very nice words. We are so grateful that Canada joined Horizon Europe. It's not yet the case of the US, unfortunately, but nonetheless, the collaboration between the US and European is extremely important. I believe that in today's world, it's even more so important for three reasons. The first one is that the transatlantic ties must be reinforced, especially between the scientific community, between the two sides of the Atlantic. This is extremely important, and we count on you, Canadians and Americans, to reach out to Europeans and vice versa. Horizon Europe offers the ideal platform for that, and we really count on you to use it to strengthen those ties. It's important that our scientific community are working together. For the second reason, that the grand challenges that we're facing are more than ever present. We see climate change, the food security, health pandemics are still today's everyday's news, and the scientific community, the global scientific community, is there to help tackling those problems. So collaboration, international collaboration is important, and Horizon Europe is committed to help you foster those collaboration. And finally, for the simple reason that international collaboration means excellence in research, you cannot do research by yourself anymore. You must be integrated into international platforms, and that's what also Horizon Europe is offering you. So we're so grateful to EURAXESS, to Daria and Jackson for this seminar on Pillar 2, which is addressing those grand challenges. We hope to see, thanks to this webinar, a lot more interaction and a lot more consortium built with Canada and with the US. And on those words, I will stop, and wishing you all a great webinar. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jackson.
Thank you both. I will now turn back to Tamara Son of ICEP Canada and her counterpart in the US after that to talk about the role of national contact points. So thank you very much, Tamara.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to take a quick moment and share my screen. Just confirming you can see my
Yes.
screen. Excellent. So just a little about me. I am the National Contact Point Coordinator for Canada. I work in Canada, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, and I'm Senior Policy Analyst on the file, and I've been working very closely with Kostas on the wide range of activities that he mentioned in his presentation. But my presentation today is basically just to talk a little bit about the opportunities for Canadians and how to reach us. So just a little taste of Pillar 2. I know Maria is going to go into more details on this, but they're under Pillar 2, where Canada has associated, there are 6 clusters. They basically cover everything that you could possibly imagine. The work program, the last work program for this particular program. So this program ends in 2027, but there will be a future one in called FP10, or Horizon Europe 2.0. We'll see what that ends up being, but this is the current program. The last calls for the program are open to Canadians. We're also given the opportunity to have access to what they call sensitive calls. These are calls that have sensitivity for a wide range of reasons. Calls related to AI, robotics, quantum, and a couple of space calls. They offer more opportunities for Canada and EU collaboration. So what does the Secretariat do? Well, we provide a support network. There are 16 national contact points in Canada with program and sector expertise in the different clusters. We provide guidance, practical information, and assistance to Canadians. We've been working together, develop best practices, sharing information with our European and international counterparts. So we're basically a gateway into finding all about Horizon Europe. So we help connecting Canadian researchers and innovators with global partners. And so, as mentioned earlier, we have been, since we associated, we've worked a number of matchmaking events. We've done road shows, many webinars to help promote the program. And as is evidenced, as Costas mentioned, by the success of Canadians and the enthusiasm that we receive on the program. So we've been very happy on that. And so here's a little contact. So that we have ICED has a website with a lot of information about Horizon Europe. If you would like to know more about where to find your national contact point in Canada, there's this link here. There's also, Canada has a trade commissioner service located across Canada and in many European countries. If you would like to find out who to contact, there's a link here, and I'll be sharing the slides later with Jackson so he can share them with the group. And of course, if you have any questions about Horizon Europe, your first stop is our generic inbox. We respond. We will get back to you within our allotted time, and we will help you find what you need in this very complex program. So I will now turn it to my American counterpart. Claire, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jackson, EURAXESS colleague, for hosting us. And it was always nice to be on the same webinar with other colleagues that's supporting Horizon Europe. And just a quick note about myself and the organization. I'm Claire Chen, the Senior Executive for National Council of University Research Administrators in CURA. We are the National Contact Point Coordinator and also the Legal and Financial Contact Point for Horizon Europe in the US. And I'm happy to introduce the role of this new role in the US, and thanks to Florence support for making this happen, and how NCURA helps US researchers and institutions engage more effectively with European research and innovation opportunities. For those who are less familiar with us, NCURA is a National Council of University Research Administrators. We actually have a sister organization in Canada called CARA. It's a Canadian Association for Research Administration. But we are also a global membership organization serving research administration professionals across more than 1,900 institutions in 47 countries. Through our department, NCURA Global Initiative, we work at the intersection of policy, funding agency, universities, and international research partnership. Our programs have supported research administration training and partnership capacity building in over 25 countries, including Canada and some of the European countries, helping institutions to strengthen the system that make global collaboration possible. And this is one of the main point of Horizon Europe. The program presents tremendous opportunity, not just for US participation, but rather a global participation, as the previous speakers have highlighted. The program connects researchers across the disciplines, borders, and sectors and address major scientific societal challenges. But for so many US institutions, the program can seem unfamiliar, and that's the term we are using for US institutions. It's not that it's a difficult program for US university to participate, it's many of our colleagues at the US institution are not familiar with the program, the structure itself, the legal and financial implication of itself. It's called consortium structural eligibility rules and proposal process can be different from many US funding mechanisms. And this is why our members and the role of National Contact Point in the US are especially valuable. Our work focuses on helping US researchers and institutions understanding where they fit within the consortium, within the Horizon Europe program, how to participate, and how to build the right and sustainable partnership within the consortium. And in practical terms, this means supporting in three areas. First, in funding opportunities, we help institutions and researchers or our members, research managers, identify relevant Horizon Europe calls that are eligible for US institutions to participate and understand how those opportunities align with each of the institution's strengths and the research strategic priority. The second component is building partnership. Horizon Europe is built on collaboration. And our global network and the US University Network help connects our members at the US institution with European counterparts or the global counterpart, potentially entering into a consortium with multiple partners. Third is focusing on participation. Beyond finding a co-partner, institutions need to understand the practical steps for this kind of engagement, including proposal preparation, financial reporting, the obligation for compliance, and long-term partnership management. And this is where I emphasize to many of our members and the researcher interested in Horizon Europe. If you are interested working with somebody in US institution or if you're interested entering Horizon Europe first time, please look for your office of sponsor research first. Please ask your institution legal counsel first, whether or not your institutional policy allow this kind of collaboration and how to solve some of the grant agreement issue first before entering a partnership. And we will send the annotated grant agreement in the chat so you can share it with your colleague at your institution, especially in sponsor office for research. And I think our member Megan from Harvard University will talk a little bit more about why that's important. And ultimately, I think the US National Contact Point will help make Horizon Europe more accessible to not just US researchers, but also how Canadian researchers can work in a multilateral consortium with US universities. And NQR members will provide a professional network, best practices, and practical expertise that needed to turn such a great opportunity into fruitful collaboration. And thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion and Q&A.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think with this, you've said it best. There's some great opportunities to collaborate, obviously, with Europe as a European program, but between Canada and the US, based on the nature of Canada being associated and the strong support services you provide to US-based institutions. So I'll encourage everyone to heed your call. And I think your mention of Megan Moore of Harvard University is perfect timing. So I'd like to now virtually go to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and invite an institutional perspective on how universities can and should get involved in Horizon Europe. So thank you very much for joining us today, Megan.
All right, so again, my name is Megan Moore, and I am the Associate Director for Pre-Award at Harvard University. So I sit in one of those offices for sponsored research that Claire mentioned. And I'm going to be speaking briefly on our experience participating as a US institution under Pillar 2 and my experience personally of some of the challenges as research administrators that we have to navigate with these awards. So by way of background, Harvard has, I believe, supported Marie Curie fellows since the inception of the Global Fellowship Program. But with respect to Pillar 2 funding and other research and innovation actions, we actually received our first European Commission award back under Framework Program 7 in 2011. At that time, university leadership had some hesitations around certain of the award terms, particularly around joint and several liability. And so at that time, the university pursued setting up a separate US nonprofit entity to serve as the award recipient under European Commission funding, and to which our researchers are actually seconded for purposes of performing the research. And we've routed our European Commission funding, excluding Marie Curie, through that organization since 2013. Now, I say that not because you have to stand up a separate organization to participate on these projects, but rather to provide some context for why Harvard has a comparatively longer history managing this funding than certain of our other US peers. We currently have 10 active European Commission and European Research Council projects, including, I believe, maybe half of those are under Pillar 2 and specifically under the health cluster. And that is, while a relatively small portion of our overall international funding portfolio, certainly these are very prestigious awards and are of great interest to our research community, particularly given the emphasis on international collaboration that Horizon Europe brings. So in terms of opportunities that, being in a non-associated country, we target, the US does have a bilateral agreement with the European Commission under which we can receive funding via the health cluster. So that tends to be where we focus our internal outreach efforts, which I'll talk about more in a moment. That program has been very attractive to our public health schools and our medical school. We also have had some success over the years being deemed essential to projects by the Commission. This isn't necessarily an option that we advertise because it is a high burden of proof, but there have been situations where we have unique infrastructure or access to unique study population that has met that threshold and allowed us to receive funding in exceptional cases. We also have participated as a subcontractor. Again, that's not the best fit for all opportunities. As a reminder, subcontractor in European Commission nomenclature is equivalent to what we might call a vendor under US federal funding. So there are certainly nuances to be navigated there, but I did want to note that it is another potential opportunity to get some of your costs covered. In terms of the role that we do play on these projects, for US institutions in particular, less so for our Canadian friends now that you are associated. But for us, often our entry point to these consortia is actually to first participate as an associated partner. That's technically the role that we play on Marie Curie fellowships, and it can be a good opportunity to sort of dip your toes into the benefits of a consortium in terms of having access to research outputs and collaborative networks without assuming the associated legal obligations and awards management burden. The trade-off is, of course, that your participation must be self-funded or funded by a different source. Under the health cluster in particular, that's where we look at participating as a fully funded beneficiary where we are receiving funding. The wrinkle is, of course, that we also must sign on to the grant agreement and assume all of those awards management obligations. Now, we could do a 2-day webinar on the kind of intricate awards management requirements at the project level. But what I wanted to leave you with today are strategies that you might consider institutionally, and this goes for both US and Canadian-based institutions, for essentially priming your institution to be successful in managing these awards. So first, know what you're getting into. As Claire mentioned, it's not that the European Commission regime is far more complicated than the US or Canadian national funding programs, but they're unfamiliar, they're different. the terminology is different. And so diving into, frankly, the ubiquitous resources that the EC has put out to assist applicants in preparing to manage these awards is going to be a good first step. Claire also mentioned that we would be sharing the annotated model grant agreement. That's a great starting point, particularly for helping your institutional leadership identify potential pain points. I'm a negotiator by trade, so I refer to them as bright lines in terms of, negotiation points that may be more difficult for your institution to work past. For us, as I mentioned at the outset, that was the liability language. Thankfully, that has been softened significantly. But those are conversations to have with your counsel's office ahead of time to understand what sort of risk mitigation strategies or alternative approaches you may be able to implement to get ahead of some of those potential conflicts with existing policies and processes. Document. If we were doing a 2-day workshop, I would probably say that roughly 30 times during the course of the presentation. But one of our main takeaways in participating on these projects is the need to have a robust record retention system, particularly for receipts on these projects. Some of that may be going away with the promise of lump sum awards, which again is another conversation. But for us, that's really been a learning curve in terms of essentially operating as if we're going to be audited on these projects, because we typically are. And then finally, investigating opportunities to provide supplemental support. This is something that we've really put a lot of effort into more recently in our EC journey, in looking at how the subject matter expertise that we've developed in our central sponsored research office may be better deployed to serve the local departments and local research teams as they navigate the awards management requirements of these projects. And then robust internal outreach. This is also something that we've developed, or I should say dedicated a lot of time to over the past few years in particular. We go to faculty meetings, we go to administrator forums. We actually released an online training that we ask PIs and their grants managers to take before they submit a proposal to the EC that essentially walks through some of the thornier requirements and the processes we have at our institution to help support compliance. And then finally, take advantages of opportunities like this. You've already taken the first step by attending this webinar. Build relationships through lower stakes participation like MSCA. Reach out to your existing European network. I have yet to have a colleague turn me down when I email them asking for their take on how to navigate a particular award requirement. As Florent mentioned, the needs of our society have demonstrated the importance, and indeed I would say the essentialness of international scientific coordination. And so while we may play a comparatively small role, it's on all of us to find ways to support this exciting and frontier breaking research that Horizon Europe is aiming to fund. And so with that, I will hand it back over.
Thank you very much, Megan. Let me remove the spotlight here. So thank you again. With that, I now have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Maria Pavlovska of Visnea. Maria is an expert in research management, focusing on EU-Canada collaboration. And as everyone knows, today's audience is comprised of researchers and administrators in Canada, the US, Europe, and beyond. So please do use the sort of conceptual information to understand where your institution might fit in on a country-by-country basis. So I'm very thankful to you, Maria, for coming to share your insights today, informed by your past experience on the whole spectrum of EU projects. This includes planning, selection, application, and management. So the floor is yours. We'll see what we can get through today. As we've said before, this is all building on past presentations. They're all recorded. People are welcome to visit our event page and watch past recordings, and then they'll learn some more from you today. And in the meantime, we'll be addressing some questions in the Q&A and then getting to that afterwards. So the floor is yours, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jackson. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I'm very happy to be here. I will now try to screen share. We've tested this, so hopefully it's all working. Okay. telling me I'm sharing my screen, so hopefully it's saying the truth. So I come to you today from Nova Scotia, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And as Jackson has said, I largely focus on EU-Canada collaboration because EU is where I spent a lot of my professional career and where Horizon Europe has originated and is based, and Canada because that's where I live today. But a lot of what I'll be saying is relevant irrespective of which part of North America you are in or really what part of the world you are in, because it's the basics of how Horizon Europe and applications work. So having said that, I'll start maybe with just a little quick question if you wanted, just to get a feel for the virtual room we're all in. And are you actively working on a Horizon Europe application now? Just if you want to scan the code or go to the website and put that in so we could have a feeling of what are people's journeys, so to speak, with this program at the moment. And we have an even split between two people now, just some really bad small number statistics right there. You know, there's 100 of you in this room, so we'll wait just a second. Let's get at least 25 people, maybe. Let's get a quarter of you. Can we get 5 more people? Okay, this is honestly surprising. There's going to be perhaps some bias in how many of you responded, but out of a quarter of you, well, almost half, again, small numbers, but are working currently. Okay, fewer. The more response that we get, the fewer of you are working on a percentage-wise on an application. But this is great. So I'll be speaking. Some of you already are very aware of some of these things. And I apologize to those of you who aren't going to maybe benefit a lot from the introduction, but I hope there'll still be some useful advice for you here. And for those of you who aren't working on an application, that's where my second question comes in. If you've considered a Horizon Europe application but decided not to pursue one, what was the reason? Is Horizon Europe something you've previously thought about? It's always fascinating. I have to put the other in, but I'm always fascinated. What is other? If any of you want to say more in the chat, I'd love to read that. Okay, I don't understand the program. Yes, that seems to be a lot, as the speakers who have gone before me, thank you so much, have mentioned. This is, I mean, in some ways it's the same. You're asking a big funder for research money. Probably all of you have done this or been adjacent to this at some point in your careers if you're here. But the European Commission is a bit of a different beast, and Horizon Europe is a complete. I mean, there's even a brand, we call it Brussels English, right? We talk about exploitation of results. That's not something you will talk about in Canada. The word exploitation has very negative connotations to a lot of people in North America, whilst it is a very basic term in Horizon Europe, work programs and applications. So just on that level, it can be very strange to start off with because just the lingo is different, the way it's assessed is different, the way partnerships are built is different. And as 24% of you have said, the lack of European partners is something that can be a problem for institutions and researchers based and innovators in North America. The good news is, those of you who didn't find any relevant calls, I will come back to that because even if a call doesn't seem relevant, chances are somewhere amongst those literal thousands of pages, there's something that actually is relevant. And that's where I'll talk a little bit about how to read these calls. In terms of not having European partners, we will also talk about how to look into that, how to see where you can get those partners. And in terms of understanding the program, Megan before me has said she could do a 2-day webinar. I could hitch on another 2-day webinar right after hers about how to understand work and how to the nitty gritty of this program and the applications. And I have about 20 minutes here. So you'll have to bear with me. This is an introduction to an introduction. But hopefully my goal here is to get you going. And for those of you who just don't know where to start, we'll give you an idea of where to start. And this is my first my first piece of advice to you, start with your network and your partners' networks. Again, Megan, thank you so much. You've literally said things I would have said, so I'll just repeat them. Most of you will have some sort of partners in Europe, maybe people you've met at a conference, maybe someone you've heard about that your colleague has worked at. Maybe your university has a memorandum of understanding signed with a European institution. Actively reach out to them. The one piece of advice I give anyone is email your closest work colleagues in Europe and tell them Canada is now associated to Horizon Europe. Are you working on any applications? I'd love to have a chat. Send that to anyone in Europe you know that you have a working relationship with, preferably, but also New Zealand, South Korea, soon India. Just honestly, there's so many countries in the world currently that are either associated or already a part of Horizon Europe. Your easiest bet is obviously Europe, but there's more. Just send that quick email. I've seen the magic it can do. It's 3 minutes of your life that can really change how your professional career and trajectory develops from here on. I've literally had it happen where someone sent this email and within 2 days they were working on a proposal with their partners. So reach out to your network and to your institutional network. Go to international meetings. Maybe focus on Europe if you're interested in Horizon Europe. There are countries, there are institutions in associated countries who have separate budgets just for sending their researchers and administrators, because administrators are an incredibly important part of Horizon Europe projects in a way that maybe a lot of Canadian researchers and organizations aren't used to. And they just send them off to do networking. It's good to have a strategic approach if possible. And I think, again, Megan spoke about that wonderfully, how Harvard incorporates thinking about Horizon Europe as it thinks about sponsored funding from elsewhere outside of the US specifically. Piecemeal applications tend not to work, and it tends to be a lot of work. And the average success rate is 16% at the moment. So if you're just going to go for a single application and not think of it more widely or not try to work within your institution in a wider framework, chances are it's going to be a lot of effort and it might not be successful. So it's worth thinking strategically about Horizon Europe. NCPs, we've had presentations from the from three, I think, or two, sorry, North American NCPs. There's ICID in Canada, and there's a bunch of networks as well in the US. Please, I know I saw the link, I think, to the contact in the chat. Use that, contact people, ask questions. They are literally there for you to do that. Trade commissioners are an underused resource. It is literally also their job to connect people. If you know for a fact you want a partner from France, it might be worth reaching out to the trade commissioner at the Paris embassy, Canadian embassy, or possibly American. I can't really speak to that, in Paris, and asking for help. They do this. They provide this service for free, and they're happy to help. Networking and matchmaking events. Again, Tamara has spoke about the work ICID is doing. There's so many of those events also organized through European NCPs available to Canadians. A lot of them are online at the moment. So sign up for the newsletters, participate in this, get the word out, get people aware of the fact that you can apply and are interested. And by people, I also mean organizations. And finally, there's the European Enterprise Network for companies. Okay, types of projects. I'm realizing I'm going to have to kind of really rush through this, but we have research and innovation actions, and coordination and support actions. The really important difference, honestly, between them for the purposes of this presentation is that if you are a for-profit organization, so not a research institution and not an NGO, in terms of innovation action, you will only have 70% of your funding covered. You will have to have the other 30%. In terms of if you are a research institution, which I think a lot of you are from, for research and innovation actions as well as CSAs, coordination and support actions, 100% of your costs, including payroll, all payroll costs are covered by project money. And in terms of thinking more deeply about these and thinking about taking some sort of leading role or a bigger part, research and innovation actions are probably more of your friend, because coordination and support actions tend to be for projects previously awarded funding by the European Commission. So you really probably want to focus on R&Is and IAs. That is also where most of the money is. Okay, swiftly moving on. What are these projects? What do they look like? Just to give you an idea. These come from the health cluster. So this is the way they look. The topic. The word topic just means we call them topics. They're names of the call, right? What the call is called. Here we have behavioral interventions as primary prevention for non-communicable diseases among young people. What type of action is it? It's a research and innovation action, which means 100%. Everyone who participates in this will get 100% of their expenses, including payroll covered. Whether you're a university, a company, represent a municipal government, an NGO, anyone can participate in European Commission projects and Horizon Europe projects. Anything with a legal entity can participate. And in an RIA, they will get 100% of all their project costs, including payroll funded. The budget that the European Commission has allotted to this is just over 20 million euro. But the important thing here that you're looking at is expected EU contribution per project, which really translates to what is the budget you're supposed to have for this proposal. It's a research and innovation action, so the Commission is going to fund 100% of it. So they're telling you politely, we expect the budget to be 9 to 10 million per project. And I always have someone ask, but can we ask for more? You can ask for more. Chances are you're not going to get it. They're telling you they've thought deeply about this. They think it should cost 9 to 10 million euro. You trust them on this. And then you do the basic math of dividing 20 by 9 to 10, you get about 2, right? Indicative number of projects expected to be funded. This is to give you an idea what the competition is going to be, how likely you are to get funded. So here it is. So this is what it looks like when you open the work program. That is the huge hundreds of pages worth of calls for each cluster published 1 to 2 years ahead. You can download all of that online right now. The work program, it literally has more than 100 pages, but in the introduction, this is what you'll see. You'll see when the call is opening, when the deadline is, and the descriptions, and then you can go to more detail about the call. Some of it is just repeating what is going on here. This is, again, written out. And then you have the expected outcomes. The expected outcomes are what the Commission, what the funder, in this case, the European Commission, wants to happen following this project, right? They want strengthened capacity of life sciences, strengthened awareness of risks and benefits. And this is very much a to-do list. This is, you deliver on what they're asking. You don't pick and choose. This isn't a mix and match. This is a very much whatever I do for this proposal has to result in these expected outcomes. Again, it's polite lingo, but what they're saying is we're giving you this much money. We want this delivered. And then they have scope. Scope is in more details of what it's really an extension of the expected outcomes with details to this, and proposal should address all the following activities, right? So this is what we want, and this is how we think it should happen. Again, this is not a pick and choose. This is very much a to-do list, and this is where your consortium comes in. And this is where the fact that you didn't find a relevant proposal might not actually mean there is nothing in Horizon Europe for you, because these expected outcomes and the scope of the projects are really big. And for example, social sciences and humanities are supposed to be involved in the vast majority, if not all, of these proposals, right? So even as a social scientist and humanities person, you should look at these calls and see where it is that you can fit. And if you're a health expert, there are in any biomedical sciences, really, there might be just this little part. This scope is not that wide. Well, it's very wide, as you can see, but sometimes there's 10 bullet points, right? And there needs to be someone in your consortium, which is the team that is going to be working on this proposal and submitting the application. And on average, the minimum is 3, but honestly, at this point, most consortia, most projects are at least 10 different institutions from multiple countries. And all of them do just that one bit that they're an expert in. Well, not all of them, but a lot of people have just a tiny bit of a project because they're the world expert in this little bit, and they'll just do this little bit for the project. And that is where you can come in and be the little bit if you want to on a project. And I'm pretty sure you can find something there because the clusters cover literally everything from car batteries to cancer to soil science to marine sciences. It's everything. So how do you actually approach this? Look at the work programs. They're online, available to for anyone to look at. Just get an idea of what's out there. Become friendly with the tenders and funding portal. It's, to be honest, not the most user-friendly thing out there. And if you're going to submit an application, you need to know how to work it. So please, anyone can get an account, do that. Take a look around. Anything that's on the tenders and funding portal is usually also in the work programs, and it's easier to read the work programs than the tenders and funding portal. And things are published on the tenders and funding portal usually when the call has opened, and you want to look at things before the call has opened, which is the start early bit. On average, it takes 6 to 12 months to put together an application, and applications calls are only open on the tenders and funding portal for 3 to 6 months. So that's again why the work programs get published, to give people time to put together their teams, their consortia, contact everyone, kind of do the whole Avengers Assemble thing, and then submit the application. Importantly, you can resubmit as many times as needed. Once you submit, it's not final. You can keep resubmitting. It's almost a save button. This is important because technology crashes, things happen. Once you've got some work done, once there's things uploaded in the database, feel free to resubmit as often as needed. And you will be resubmitting because these things tend to go through very many iterations. I've worked on proposals that have gone through, not to scare you, hundreds of iterations, and hence also why it can take a long time to work on them. And as usual with these things, the deadline is at least a week before the deadline. Leaving things to the last minute tends to result, as you know, I'm sure you all know, in disasters often, especially if you're working between multiple time zones. Someone thinks it's their 10 o'clock when really it's all in Brussels time and it's too late. You really don't want to do that. In our case, lots of us are in North America. Just the time zones can be a complication. So how to think about these calls. Firstly, look at alignment. The scope and requirements are a to-do list, and you have to build a strong consortium and think about your unique selling point. And then think about, do you have time to put an application together or work with someone? How many of these applications will be funded? There are calls where there's going to be a single application. There are calls with 5 funded applications. You have to really think where you want to spend your efforts and what support and resources can I use and need. This is something that's been touched on by the previous speakers. I think the big learning curve, at least in Canada, around Horizon Europe has been how much support is actually needed with these applications. In most European countries, researchers write very small bits of the application, to be honest, the excellence bit, which is really where the science comes in. The rest of it is written by administrators because it's things like gender equality, it's things like implementation, like knowledge translation. These are not necessarily things that researchers do or know that much about. So you really need your organization's support to be able to work on and give good details and good information on how, for example, the gender equality work system or support works at your research institution, because you will actually be evaluated on that. And chances are that as a researcher, that is not where your strength lies. So you need to have a support team helping you with these applications. And finally, network. Think about, could anyone in my network already be working on this? Or do I want to build a network around this call? These are really important questions, some of the basic questions that need to be asked kind of early on if you want to really participate in a meaningful way in these applications. So how do you join a consortium? All applications are in English. And the one thing that I've learned over years of working on this, it's really good to have a delegated person, and that delegated person does not need to be the PI. It is almost more useful if they're not the PI, because the PI will have all sorts of other things going on. And a lot of the time in EU countries or associated countries with a longer history of Horizon Europe projects, there is simply a Horizon Europe project coordinator, and they deal with all the projects coming into a certain department or a certain lab, and they are the contact person, and they assign roles to different people in their own institution. They make sure the work is delivered on time. They make sure emails are responded to on time. It is rarely the researcher themselves that does all of this, because it's a lot of coordination with a lot of institutions about a lot of things that are not necessarily deeply research related, because they're project management. The more introductory meetings, the better, quite honest. You want to make sure you introduce yourself, go to as many networking meetings as possible, talk to as many people as possible. And again, that's maybe why the PI doesn't need to be the person doing it. Maybe they can have someone representing them, because chances are that they're busy with other things. It's good to have a little sheet prepared about your organization or lab, just a literal one page about your unique selling point and the applications that you flagged the calls as potentially interesting to you. You can circulate this at any number of events, including online networking meetings, and saying, hey, this is what we're interested in. This is what we're really good at. Can we talk? Are you interested? Think about work package leadership, which is perhaps more manageable than project leadership. Think about also task leadership. That is a step down from the work package in terms of burden, organizational burden, but can be a very important part if you have that one particular task that you can deliver for the proposal. Budget, person months, that is speaking of Brussels English, that is a term that we use a lot that will need to be calculated. You will need to think deeply about your budget, and you probably, if you're a researcher, you're probably not the person to do that, to be honest, because payroll costs, again, are probably not something you spend a lot of time thinking about, and rightly so. Legal and financial conversations. My previous co-panelists have mentioned, go talk to legal, go talk to project management, really important. In terms of your institution, think about gender. There's the requirement for a gender equality plan, which every single Canadian institution I've talked to has fulfilled. I don't think that is something you need to worry about much. But the administration preparation can be significant. So it's really important to have a support team at your institution and not be doing this alone. Bottlenecks. My time for this presentation is currently a bottleneck, so I'll just run through this. Timelines, that can be, look at the work packages, work programs. Application workload, it can be a lot. Consortium building, you need all these moving pieces. Communication between different continents at this point, different time zones, different institutions, different levels of experience with Horizon Europe. This can all be a lot. I am speaking from so much experience here, so I have stories of frustration and challenges I could share for yet another webinar, which I won't do here, but I'm flagging this is really important. Bureaucracy and the terms that you're not used to as a perhaps a newcomer to this program. So where to start? Explore the work programs. Go look at those, all of them. You think you fit neatly into cluster one because you're a health researcher, but I guarantee you that there's health-related things and calls in other work programs. Enhance and build on your existing networks and organizational strategies. If you can, like, reach out to people right now, today, even email someone in Europe, and see what happens. And if you can, try to think of Horizon Europe strategically, because again, piecemeal applications tend to be so much time and effort and not necessarily a great return on that investment. So it's worth thinking more broadly. Some resources to leave you with, and thank you, and apologies, Jackson and Daria, for, I'm pretty sure, talking more than I promised I would. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. There's a lot of content to go through, and we wanted to promise to the audience time to get some questions in the Q&A box. So I think you've given a great overview of a lot of information in the little amount of time we've assigned to you. I would now like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Daria Buchner-Karajan, who will lead the Q&A session. As some of you can see, we've already typed out some written responses to some questions. We have a few open ones. So Daria, thank you so much for moderating this Q&A.
Thank you, Jackson. Thank you. And I also want to thank you to all our speakers. I think you all complement each other, because Horizon Europe has so many different aspects to, cover. So I think all of you just mentioned most of the important parts. Jackson, you also mentioned that this is not the very, beginner level webinar. So we just assume that some of the very basic questions like what is the difference between Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 we're not going to cover, but mostly on Pillar 2 and how, especially the partnerships and the others. So we have received several questions when the participants also, were registering. They also have some questions. So I will start with Maria. And I think I have literally different questions for everyone. So it's really good. So I took some notes. So the first question I want to start with is, Maria, how many call can one organization apply for? I mean, for the Pillar 2, because there are some different clusters. They can be partners, coordinators, or just, the partners. So what is this limit?
There is no limit. Good news, you can go for as many as you like. What's more, some organizations submit multiple proposals for a single call in different consortia. This is also not against the rules. So there's literally no limit. What we find the limit for organizations is their administrators' capacity to deal with proposals. There is no top-down limit imposed by the European Commission. There is a limit in organizations that take this seriously and actually feel like they need to support their applicants. They limit the number of applications sort of bottom up because there's only so much time there's only so many people that can spend so much time on an application. So really the limitation is with the administrators support staff's time to work on an application. There's no limitation on how many applications you can put in if you want
And
to.
how about receiving the funds? I mean, for each call, for example, there are the different clusters, different applications, but they can get different funding. They applied a lot, but they can get funding for different calls, right?
Of course, whatever you get funded for, if the proposal accepted, you will receive the money. Again, there's no limit on how much money you can get. Some universities in Europe get hundreds of millions of euro annually and more than it's enormous amounts of money. It's the budgets of small countries almost worth of money per university. So absolutely no limit.
Okay, thank you so much. So I can just, okay, Tamara, the question was to Kostas, but I can just, leave it to you to answer. We know where to look and get all these numbers, but in general, how can we reach out the numbers that the Canadian institutions, organizations applies for Pillar 2, how many funding they have get till 2024. So do we have this overall data that you can share on your website, or do you have a kind of general information about that? It is the same for Claire, for the US, if you have. So we have some statistics, but if you would like to just mention Cordis and the other websites as well, we would be happy.
So yes, Daria. So I think your best website then that I would recommend for all data is the Horizon dashboard. So the Horizon dashboard, it provides the most not necessarily up to date, but accurate information. It's constantly changing. It is protected information about who applies and how many. So there is information on success rates, but in terms of you only for Cordis and the dashboard, you only have those who've won, not those who have not.
Yes.
And I think I will emphasize because the dashboard sometimes they have outdated information from even FP7. It might take a while to filter and look through. The two resources I would recommend, one is, of course, EURAXESS. Our friends have been really diligently putting alumni networks, especially for Marie Curie. EURAXESS, I would say, I'll pinpoint as the most important resource to understand which opportunities, which project, which institution have successfully hosted Marie Curie Fellow. And they can connect you actually with a successful Marie Curie Fellow. And then the second point, again, I'll emphasize our members work at the university. at the central office for research management, research administration, reach out to them, because chances are if a university you are sitting in have participated, well, they might already have hosted Marie Curie Fellow you are not aware of. The central office of a sponsored research would know this as well. So of course the online resource, but I would encourage more people-to-people connection, reach out to people and ask the question.
Okay, Claire, and I want to turn to Megan. In your presentation, you mentioned that you have some online trainings for PIs or cross-training opportunities. I was in a CARA meeting in 2 weeks ago in Canada, and I met so many, research administrators, and they were talking a lot about the pre-award and post-award and how these, processes, and it's really, so I think we have so many audiences, research administrators here in this webinar. So can you just clarify how this process can be really easier and smooth for the PIs and for the coordinators, how you really, because the Canadian organizations really asked us how we are going to manage this, how we are going to. So US has a bit longer, experience as Harvard. I mean, you have. So I just want to know what kind of trainings you offer. Are they open to everyone? So these online trainings, or just specific to your university?
Sure. So the training I mentioned is one that we developed last year for our internal community specifically, but certainly happy to talk to anyone who may want access or may want more information on what we've included. But generally speaking, the training is aimed at our PIs and the local administrators that support them on kind of what they need to know. So it's really focused on the day-to-day management of the award, and I think more broadly, we try as much as possible to make how we manage EC projects as similar as we can to how we manage any other sponsored project at our institution. I mean, I think of the benefits, perhaps, of being at a US institution and embarking on EC funding is that we already have a long history of working with our own federal government on very complex award requirements. So it's less about getting up to speed on how to manage a complex project and more about drawing parallels where we can to processes and practices that we already have in place as the recipient of a large amount of US federal funding. And so we found really kind of drawing those connections has been almost most helpful of anything that we do in educating our administrators on what these projects demand. And that's work that we do in concert with EURAXESS and ENCURA as well. Like, how can we better demystify some of the terminology and some of the approaches to show where European Commission funding can be more similar than it is different to processes that we already have.
I think that would be really helpful because community of practice is so important. What you share, because we have a very long, experience about this funding and very successful, we all know. But Canadian universities for Horizon Europe, they're really good. They're learning. The US has just more specific health cluster, but still for the others with their own funding, they can still apply. So I just want to turn back to Maria. There are lots of questions related to partners, how to find partners, one question is very specific about how to diversify the partners. Is it really important? Because some projects are very specific, but these are not all like basic research like in ERC or Marie Curie related. So how about the importance of diversification of the partners, intersectoral or interdisciplinary approach? I think we also need to mention because there are some questions related to that.
Thank you, Daria. I think that's a very good question and an important one because an important part of Horizon Europe projects are impact and implementation and showing the long-lasting results, especially for the ones that the innovation actions that are higher TRLs and closer to market. But not just that, also the research and innovation actions showing that there's an organization, an entity of some sort that is working with researchers and willing to implement their solutions, be it a municipality, because they can also participate, a federal government organization, a company, a not-for-profit, anyone who, so to speak, is in touch with real people in the real world outside of the ivory tower. That's a really important part of these applications. And a quarter of Horizon Europe participants are SMEs. So, and who again, if they're participating in a research and innovation action, can get 100% of the participation costs funded. So it's important again to highlight that Horizon Europe is not just a research funding program. It is, in its very name, a research and development and innovation funding program. It is not basic research, not Pillar 2. The Maria Skłodowska-Curie actions and ERC are the bottom-up basic research programs. Pillar 2 that we have mostly talked about today is very much a top-down research and innovation program that is searching for real-life solutions to real-life problems.
Thank you. I have some questions, but they're very specific, so I don't really want to cover, and we have mainly covered most of them. But there's one question here. We are Canadian business and nonprofit organization, have registered online European Commission portal, but we don't have the code. How can we have this? So I think you can just clarify what is this code or PIC number or, just to make. Maria, I think you can make,
There's so every organization that participates in Horizon Europe projects needs to have a PIC number. I can't really speak to this question because, the moment you register, if you provide all the required information, you should get a PIC number. So I feel like maybe all the required information hasn't been provided, or if it has been, this is more of, I think, tech support than me question. But generally, every organization that registers in the tenders and funding portal gets a PIC, which I honestly can't remember what it stands for because we all just call it a PIC, and I'm sure it stands for something, but I can't remember what. And it's really easy to get one, and you can all get one if you have a registered legal entity. Anyone can get a PIC. So, yeah.
I might add on this.
Please.
Tamara,
Yes.
please.
There are so many acronyms. For clarification, PIC means Participant Identification Code.
Thank you, Tamara. Yes, I did not remember that. I'm not sure I knew that. We all just call it a PIC. Thank you.
I'll just briefly, as I may, Daria, supplement this by saying
Sure.
Once you register, you sort of entering into this public EU database with the basic information for your organization. So based on that individual person's question, I was able just to simply type in the name on the EU Funding and Tenders portal website. There's a PIC lookup page, again, completely open. And just with the title alone, I was able to find the PIC for both of this individual's institutions. Separate institutions. So there you go. That specific question should be answered. But as Maria said, I didn't realize it was issued instantly. So in that case, it looks like it's just there as long as you don't get kicked back saying something's missing. And then maybe if anyone wants to add to this, one thing that I think can be very important is the PIC is a single number for your overarching institution. So sometimes something that happens is someone within an office or department might register one thinking, oh, this is for my specific part within university, and that can cause conflicts. And at that point, you have to get human administrators involved in Brussels to help sort of de-link or merge things. And I've been told that's extremely convoluted. So if anyone has a personal experience to that or just wants to maybe underscore what I'm saying, I can say, please do check your institution first. Megan, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. The good thing is anyone can get a PIC. The bad thing is anyone can get a PIC. And so if you're not sure if your organization may already be registered or you are thinking about registering your organization, highly recommend that, particularly if you're a university, you confer with your central sponsored research office on that project or on that process to make sure that either you're using a PIC that your institution may already have or that the institution is consolidating around a single PIC number. We have had to go through the deregistration process for one of our enterprising departments. And let me tell you, proving a negative is extremely, extremely difficult. So,
Okay, this was really helpful. Thank you, Megan. And there's one specific question to you. So if they want to reach out to you, Megan, is it okay
oh
for
yes, absolutely.
related to not only Pillar 2, but MSCA or Global Fellowship, because you have so many experience about that. So I think they
Yes,
would really
please.
appreciate it.
Welcome
Perfect.
any and all contacts.
Perfect. So I think we have covered most of the questions, but I just want to mention about partnerships. When I was in Kara and presenting with the other colleagues, my presentation was about how we can use Pillar 1 strategically for creating partnerships for Pillar 2, because we have already a good number of MSCA or ERC grantees in some of our universities. So why don't you really keep the contact with them? And then because they have already have connections with Europe and they know with whom they can collaborate, they know the university, they know the organization. So this is a kind of contribution from my side as well, that I think this should be another approach for parties finding reliable and trustable, partners, because this is so important, because partners, I think, is the most important, one of the most important part, because it's more not internal. Internally, you can do something and then, find a way. But, if you don't have really good partners, then the project might have some difficulties. Even you get the funding. So you really need to find good partners that you really trust, right? So I strongly recommend to connect with your ERC grantees or MSCA postdoctoral fellows so that you can create this database or mapping, so that it can, not for this call, perhaps for the future calls, it can be also very helpful. So I want to finish with these remarks and give the floor to Jackson. And thank you so much again. I think we covered most of the questions, and this webinar was a bit different than the previous ones. We mainly shared the practical aspects of Pillar, but I think we need more hands-on experience about this, right? Okay, thank you so much.
So
Tamara, I think you want to mention something? Yeah, please.
Yes, I just wanted to mention one thing. I just noticed in the chat there was a question
Sure.
about AI digital media.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to let that person know. First of all, there's going to be some new calls coming, particularly in AI and science. Some horizontal calls, some bridging calls. They are in the process of being developed, so stay tuned for that. And that in Canada we do have a digital national contact point starting next week. So that I just wanted to mention that, and that it's very important to note that these calls, I think Maria mentioned that they are top down, so you have to form your consortium around the call. It's not your idea that where the call comes from. I just wanted to remind everyone of that. But thank you again, Jackson and Daria, for inviting me, and I'll turn it to Jackson for the closing remarks.
thank you.
Thank you.
I might take the good energy from Tamara and Daria and give everyone a chance to give a closing remark. I think what we can do here is I will stay for a minute or two, but we'll just close the recording. So I'd like to say thank you very much for attending live or watching this recording. And again, if you're watching this live, you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow by when I hope to have the recording already processed and the speaker PDFs available. If not tomorrow, within a day of that. So I will end the recording here, and then I'll share an additional remark or two after that. So thank you very much.